My boyfriend says CMMING in me is a boundary. What should I do? Let me take you on a journey through a story that might sound familiar. But with every twist and turn, it might reveal something about your own life or the relationships of those around you. Relationships are never simple. Sometimes they start beautifully, full of passion and hope. But there are often dark alleys that can lead us to unexpected places. This story begins like many others, with love, warmth, and good intentions, but quickly it takes a turn towards toxicity, manipulation, and self-realization. Her name was Anna. She was young, optimistic, and in love. When she first met Mark, she thought she had found the one, someone who could make her laugh even in the darkest of times and with whom she could share her dreams. They had what many would describe as a strong chemistry. But over time, things began to shift. Little behaviors, small and seemingly insignificant, started to emerge. And with them, doubts began to grow in Anna's mind. She brushed them off at first, thinking it was just her overthinking. After all, everyone has quirks, right? But the real change started with something Anna never imagined could become a point of contention: boundaries around intimacy. Mark began to express a desire that Anna wasn't comfortable with. He kept insisting that the only way they could truly connect was if he could be entirely free with her. At first, it was subtle, framed as a loving request. But it didn't take long for the manipulation to show itself. Anna tried to have a conversation with Mark about her comfort level. But each time, Mark would dismiss her concerns, telling her she was being unreasonable, that it was normal, and that she needed to meet his needs if she truly loved him. Anna found herself increasingly frustrated. It wasn't just the insistence on something she wasn't ready for, but Mark's reaction when she refused. He would pout, grow distant, and often ignore her for hours, sometimes days. She found herself walking on eggshells, trying to predict what might set him off. The warmth that had once enveloped their relationship had turned cold. Gone were the days of laughing over shared meals and planning their future. The joy seemed to have been replaced by power plays, emotional withholding, and a sense that Anna was never quite enough. The worst part was how good Mark was at twisting the narrative. Whenever Anna tried to bring up how she felt, the way his behavior made her feel unimportant, Mark would turn it around. "Are you seriously making a big deal out of this? After everything I do for you?" he'd say. And with that, the tables turned. Instead of talking about Mark's actions, Anna found herself apologizing for bringing it up, for making him feel bad, and for not understanding him enough. It was exhausting. She didn't know how she ended up in this emotional labyrinth where she was always the one at fault. It took a while, but eventually, Anna began to see the relationship for what it was: an unhealthy dynamic where her needs were not being respected. She realized that Mark's insistence on boundaries was never about genuine care or respect. It was about control. It was a mask to hide his own insecurities, a way to manipulate her into compliance. She saw how often he would use her love against her, framing his unreasonable demands as tests of her devotion. And when she didn't comply, he punished her by withdrawing affection, by ignoring her, by making her feel that she was the one destroying their relationship. Anna's realization came to a head one night when she decided she needed to talk to Mark. She was determined to express how she felt, to stand up for herself. When she confronted him, Mark's reaction was predictable. He rolled his eyes, dismissed her concerns, and minimized her feelings. "Why are you being so dramatic? Are you really going to throw away everything we have over a little disagreement?" he said. But Anna stood firm. She explained that it wasn't just about one issue, it was about respect, about feeling heard, and about having her boundaries honored. The conversation escalated, and Mark, feeling cornered, started to blame Anna, accusing her of being naive, of not understanding what a real relationship required. It was in that moment, seeing the smugness turn to fear on Mark's face, that Anna knew what she had to do. She walked out, went to her parents' house, and made the decision not to look back. It wasn't easy. Mark tried to contact her, apologizing, making promises, but Anna had made up her mind. She had finally seen the truth of their relationship. It was built on manipulation, not love. Now, let me introduce another story, this time about Emily and Josh. A seemingly perfect couple. They had been together for 6 years, married for 4. They loved each other deeply. Or at least that's what Emily thought. Josh was fun, attentive, and caring. But there was always a part of his life that seemed off limits, his work. Emily had no interest in meeting his coworkers or going to work events. She was introverted, preferred her own space, and never thought much about it. But then, one day, something happened that made her question everything. Emily was out at a bar with friends when a man approached her, introducing himself as Jake, a coworker of Josh. At first, Jake seemed friendly, but then he said something that caught Emily off guard. "It's great that you and your brother are so close," he said. Emily was confused. "Brother?" She laughed it off, thinking maybe Jake was drunk and didn't know what he was saying. She decided not to mention the incident to Josh. But then, weeks later, another of Josh's coworkers approached her, this time when she was out walking her dog, and referred to her as Josh's sister again. This time, Emily couldn't brush it off. She felt a knot in her stomach. Why were Josh's coworkers referring to her as his sister? It didn't make sense. She decided she needed answers. That night, after Josh came home late from a work event, she confronted him, but Josh denied everything. He played dumb, acting like he didn't know what she was talking about. He even tried to laugh it off, which only made Emily more frustrated. Over the next few days, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She remembered the advice she had read online: when you're unsure, look for evidence. So, she did. She went through Josh's phone while he was asleep. She wasn't proud of it, but she needed answers. What she found shocked her. There were messages between Josh and his coworkers, where he referred to Emily as his sister. There were even flirty messages between Josh and some female colleagues. While there was nothing explicit, it was clear that Josh was hiding parts of his life from Emily, and she felt betrayed. When Emily confronted Josh again, he finally broke down. He admitted that he had lied to fit in. His coworkers were all young, single, and wild. They teased the one married guy in the office, and Josh didn't want to be excluded. He had started the lie as a way to fit in, but it spiraled out of control. He confessed that he was ashamed, that he never wanted to hurt Emily. But the damage was done. Emily didn't know if she could trust him again. She loved Josh, but the lie was so big, so unnecessary, that she couldn't understand why he would do it. These two stories have a lot in common. They both show how easily love can be twisted by insecurity, by manipulation, and by lies. In Anna's case, it was about control. Mark wanted to control her body, her decisions, and used love as a weapon to do so. In Emily's case, it was about deceit. Josh wanted to be accepted by his peers and was willing to lie about his marriage to do so. Both Mark and Josh failed to respect their partners, and in doing so, they destroyed the trust that is fundamental to any healthy relationship. The lesson here is clear. Relationships require mutual respect, honesty, and communication. If one person is constantly trying to manipulate the other, or if they are hiding significant parts of their life, that's not love, that's control. Love should never make you feel small, unheard, or disrespected. It should empower you, make you feel safe, and give you the freedom to be yourself. For anyone who finds themselves in a situation like Anna or Emily, remember this: you deserve someone who respects you fully, someone who doesn't use your love against you, who doesn't lie to fit in, and who honors your boundaries. Love should be about partnership, not power. And if you ever feel like you're being manipulated or disrespected, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to put yourself first. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you have is the one with yourself. So, ask yourself, are you being loved? Or are you being controlled? The answer to that question might just change your life. My husband made me stop believing in soulmates. Now, after 15 years, he's finally opened up and strengthened our love even more. Let me share a story that starts with the end of what seemed like a perfect love, only to reveal something deeper and more real. Imagine believing, from the time you were a child, that there's only one person out there for you, a soulmate. That's exactly what I thought. Growing up, I had this picture of love and marriage that was pure, unbreakable, almost like something out of a fairy tale. I thought that once you found the one, everything else would fall into place. But life has a funny way of showing us that things aren't always what they seem. This story is about heartbreak, healing, and discovering that sometimes, the best things in life are the ones we never saw coming. I was 5 years old when I met Dave. He was the boy next door, the one I thought was my destined partner. Our families would even joke about it, calling us soulmates. before we even understood what that meant. From our childhood playdates to our teenage years, Dave and I were inseparable. We shared hobbies, secrets, dreams, and everything in between. And when we were old enough, we got married. Looking back, it's clear that I was swept up in the dream of what love was supposed to be, not realizing that real love goes far beyond shared interests and childhood memories. For a while, things were wonderful. Dave and I created a life together, planned for a family, and mapped out our future. But then, one day, my entire world came crashing down. I came home early, hoping to surprise Dave for our anniversary, only to find him with another woman in our bed. The sight was like something out of a nightmare. In that single, soul-crushing moment, everything I believed about love shattered. The man I thought was my one true love had betrayed me. All the years we'd spent together, all the promises and plans, gone in an instant. I spiraled into a dark place. For 2 years, I struggled to find myself again. Therapy helped, but there was a void that I couldn't fill. My friends tried to set me up on dates, but I was searching for pieces of Dave in every man I met, which only led to disappointment. I clung to this idea of a soulmate, convinced that if I could just find someone like Dave, but faithful, I'd feel whole again. It took me a long time to realize that I was chasing an illusion. Then I met Jay. He was nothing like Dave. Where Dave was the life of the party, Jay was reserved, almost stoic. On our first date, he barely spoke, only asking me a few questions about my career. It was awkward, and I was certain we wouldn't go out again. But Jay called a couple of days later, and despite my hesitation, I agreed to a second date. Gradually, Jay began to open up, though he was still far from what I'd imagined in a partner. He wasn't my soulmate, he was just Jay. Over time, however, Jay started showing me a different kind of love, one that didn't need grand gestures or endless declarations. On one date, after an amazing night together, I asked if I could grab a snack from his kitchen. Instead of handing me a sandwich, Jay disappeared and returned 20 minutes later with my favorite takeout. I was stunned. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not because Jay had memorized a list of my favorite things, but because he cared enough to listen and remember. Our relationship moved slowly, which was exactly what I needed. Jay wasn't trying to sweep me off my feet or win me over with charm. He was patient, steady, and, most importantly, honest. Through small acts of kindness, Jay helped me piece my heart back together, showing me that real love isn't about perfection or destiny. It's about choice. It's about deciding every day to be there for someone, even when things aren't picture perfect. Jay had his own share of struggles. His parents had passed away due to addiction, leaving him with a turbulent childhood and the scars of abandonment. He rarely said, "I love you," not because he didn't feel it, but because he was still learning how to express something he'd barely seen in his own life. At first, this bothered me. I was used to the idea that love needed words, that it required a constant reaffirmation. But with Jay, I learned that actions often speak louder. One night, after years of marriage and the birth of our children, I finally told Jay that I wanted to say, "I love you," more. His response was simple: "As long as you need to hear it, I'll say it." That was enough for me. From that moment on, our love took on a new depth. We began to express our feelings more openly, not because it was necessary, but because we wanted to. Looking back, I realize now that the idea of a soulmate is both beautiful and limiting. It places so much weight on the notion of one person being able to fulfill every need, to be perfect in every way. But that's not what love is. Love is imperfect. It's messy. It's learning to forgive, to grow, and to accept that people are going to hurt you. Sometimes unintentionally, and sometimes in ways that cut deep. True love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who will stand by you as you complete yourself. In Jay, I found a partner who understood that love is a journey, not a destination. His quiet strength helped me see that life isn't about fairy tales or grand romances. It's about the moments we create, the small gestures that show we care, and the commitment to keep choosing each other, even when things get hard. Jay's upbringing was one of hardship and resilience. He grew up in an environment where love was scarce, and survival was the only priority. His parents were addicts, often too lost in their own world to care for their child. It was his grandfather who became Jay's anchor, teaching him skills that helped him survive, like woodworking, fixing electrical appliances, and managing on his own. His grandfather's influence made Jay the man he is today, capable, resourceful, and pragmatic. When Jay was 17, his grandfather passed away, and Jay found himself homeless. He stayed at a local shelter until a pastor from the neighborhood church took him in. It was there, among people who showed kindness despite having little themselves, that Jay learned what community and generosity meant. The pastor encouraged Jay to apply for scholarships, eventually helping him secure a place at a good university. Jay chose to study finance, driven by the desire to understand money, something that had always been scarce in his life. Jay's background made him wary of showing emotion, especially love. He had spent his childhood witnessing the destructive behavior of his parents, which led him to believe that love was chaotic and unreliable. It wasn't until he started tutoring for a kind family during his teenage years that he saw what a loving household looked like. He observed the parents' gentle touches, the laughter that filled their home, and the warmth between them. It gave him hope that maybe, just maybe, he could one day build something similar for himself. For years, Jay worked hard to overcome his past. By the time we met, he had built a stable career, though he still carried the weight of his past on his shoulders. I never knew the full extent of his struggles until much later in our relationship. It took time for him to share his story, to let me in, and when he did, I realized that the quiet strength I had admired in Jay came from a place of pain and resilience. He wasn't closed off because he didn't care. He was protecting himself from a world that had hurt him too many times. Our marriage wasn't without challenges. There were moments when I wished Jay could be more expressive, when I longed for romantic words or gestures. But he showed his love in other ways, by making my favorite meal after a long day, by staying up late with me when our daughter had a fever, by holding my hand when I needed comfort. Over time, I began to see that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes, it's quiet and steady, like a river that keeps flowing even when the path gets rocky. When we had our children, I saw a side of Jay that melted my heart. He was determined to be the father he never had. He would wake up in the middle of the night to change diapers, rock our daughter to sleep, or simply sit by her crib, watching her breathe. He made a promise to our children the day they were born, that he would protect them, love them, and be there for them, always. It was in those moments, watching him care for our kids, that I realized just how deep his love ran. Jay's journey towards opening up wasn't easy. There were times when the weight of his past would resurface, when old wounds would ache, and he would retreat into himself. But he never let it keep him down for long. He sought therapy, not just for himself but for us, so that he could learn to be a better partner, a better father. Through therapy, he began to confront the demons that had haunted him for so long. He learned to forgive himself for the things he couldn't control, to let go of the guilt that had held him back. I remember one particular night when Jay came home from a therapy session. He walked in, dropped his bag by the door, and pulled me into a hug. For a moment, he just held me, his breath shaky. Then he whispered, I'm sorry for all the years I couldn't say it. I love you more than anything." It was the first time I'd seen him so vulnerable, and it broke my heart in the best way. We sat down and talked for hours that night, about our fears, our hopes, and the future we wanted to build together. It was a turning point in our marriage, a moment that brought us closer than ever before. Since that night, things have changed between us. Jay has made an effort to be more open, to express his feelings, and to let me in. We've started saying, "I love you," more often. Not because we need to, but because we want to. And every time he says it, I know it comes from a place of genuine love and commitment. It's not just a phrase, it's a promise. A reminder of everything we've been through and everything we still have ahead of us. Our love story isn't the one I imagined when I was a child. It's not a fairy tale, and it's far from perfect. But it's real. It's built on a foundation of trust, resilience, and the decision to keep choosing each other every single day. Jay may not be my soulmate in the traditional sense, but he is my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. And that, to me, is more meaningful than any fairy tale. True love isn't about perfection or destiny. It's about the choice to love, the courage to forgive, and the resilience to keep growing together. Sometimes, the person who brings you the most joy and healing is the one you least expected. Let go of the myths, the expectations, and the fantasies. Open yourself to the possibility that love might come in a form you never imagined. From a person you never thought you'd fall for. And remember, real love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who's willing to go through the ups and downs with you. Someone who makes the journey worthwhile.